This is Roundtable, from O.J. Simpson to Britney Spears, from Johnny Depp to Wagatha Christie, celebrities in court, bearing their souls for perceived injustices. But who really wins in the court of public opinion? Will the biggest, most likeable star, or often than not, walk away with their character intact? And are some stars just being badly advised? Good to have your company. I'm David Foster. Over the last few weeks on both sides of the Atlantic, column inches and TikTok have been abuzz with court cases between celebrities and footballers' wives. In the USA, Johnny Depp's defamation suit against his former wife, Amber Heard, centered on an opinion piece she wrote for the Washington Post, in which she described herself as a public figure representing domestic abuse. Well, Heard didn't name Depp in that piece, but he sued her for implying he was a domestic abuser and sought $50 million in damages. Here in London, at the High Court, footballers' wives Colleen, Rooney and Rebecca Vardy have been locked in battle after Vardy accused Rooney of defamation for the viral social media post. It was all dubbed Wagatha Christie. Rooney accusing Vardy of leaking stories about her to the tabloids. Now, these multi-million-dollar legal cases may have had some of us at least glued to our phones, but are they beneficial to the celebs when their laundry's being aired in public? Let's go to the west coast of the United States, Los Angeles to be precise. Ryan Baker awaits us there, managing partner of the law firm Waymaker LLP. He's represented clients in defamation cases. We will talk about Mel Gibson and Paris Hilton among them. In London, Caroline Frost, commentator on British television and media, and to Bath in the UK. And we see Paul MacKenzie-Cummins, managing director of Clearly PR. Caroline, you first of all. I mentioned washing dirty laundry in public. Well, no matter how hard you try, you're not really going to get rid of the stink, are you? And the problem is nobody seems to come out of these cases well, whether they win or lose.
No, I mean, there are two winners, I think, and neither of them are the celebrities that we tune in for. I think the first winners are, of course, the people selling the ads on these increasing number of streams, live streams from courtrooms that we're coming to see as a major source of entertainment. And of course, the other winners, as always, are the lawyers, the expert witnesses and other participants whose brands go through the ceiling as a result of this enormous global exposure that they wouldn't get any other way. No other winners in the courtroom. The celebs have a brand going in that can only diminish through these very personal, humdrum and sometimes very unedifying details that we get to learn about.
Ryan, I don't want to impugn your character, but do you know of people in your business, the law business, who've encouraged celebrities to take on cases that it might have been advisable for them to avoid?
Well, I can't say that I specifically know people who have encouraged celebrities to do that, but there are no shortage of lawyers, of course, around the world, and especially in this country. And there are a variety of views on any particular case, and there are certainly lawyers who will do a better job of talking about the real consequences of these types of cases with their clients before they're filed, because once they are filed, the horse leaves the barn, and these cases get a life of their own in certainly in some cases, as we've seen recently. And there's no way to put the horse back in the barn, especially when you're in court. It's a public proceeding. There is a presumption that all the proceedings in court are available to the public, and there's a high bar to seal those proceedings. So there certainly is a lot of dirty laundry that comes out. And there are lawyers, again, who will make a point of trying to dissuade any client of taking a defamation case to court. But of course, there's always a lawyer who will take that job. And I have to agree. I mean, one of the winners in any of these types of cases are the lawyers. And just to point one thing out, in the United States, certainly it is the case that the taxpayers are the ones who are paying the most of the cost of these cases. So when you have a 2-month trial like Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard, there is an immense cost on the state of Virginia for that trial.
Can't see very much of your house, but some lovely artwork behind you. If I may be so cheeky, could I say, did you get some of the wherewithal to purchase these things from looking after people like Mel Gibson and Paris Hilton?
Well, yes, we have certainly represented some of those types of clients and continue to represent them. But of course, I think as a lawyer with scruples, you always want to do what's best for your client, and you want to have a long-term relationship. So certainly, again, while there are lawyers who may want to go out and take any case to court and start ringing up the bills, my practice is to form long-term relationships and therefore to advise clients of the perils of a case like a defamation case. But oftentimes clients have an agenda. They want to accomplish what their goal is. And it's certainly not my job to stand in the way of a client, as long as I properly advise them of the risks and all the consequences of a particular type of action.
There is a but here, though, isn't it? And we're dealing with people who are used to having a circle, a coterie of advisors who in many cases fawn over them because they know that is what these stars actually like. Is it very difficult for them to accept advice that may be in their best interest if it doesn't suit what they want to think?
Well, it absolutely is. You're right on point. There are certainly, when you get to a certain level of celebrity in any event, nothing but yes men and women around any given celebrity. And it's often hard and frankly intimidating to come into the room sometimes and try to talk to somebody who you've watched on the screen since you were a child, which I have done, and try to talk them out of something that they desperately want to do. And oftentimes, as I say, you don't prevail on the client, and you ultimately then, if that's the case, you try to navigate the course as best as possible. And listen, there's also a lot of opportunities to resolve these types of disputes out of court. So one of the first things you may do is reach out to try to resolve things, identifying the perils to both sides. And so there are a variety of paths you can take to try to affect the client's interests. But you're right that certain clients of certain stature, certainly in the celebrity world, are hard to discourage from what they really want to do.
Paul, as we record this program, we have not yet had a verdict in the Rebecca Vardy, Colleen, Rooney, the Wagatha, Christie case in the United Kingdom. Is it likely that Rebecca Vardy, as the one who's taking the case to the court and suggesting that Colleen Rooney defamed her, even if she wins or if she loses, is she going to come out of this with much of a remaining reputation?
No, not a chance of it. I think what has been evident from every single week that's gone by that this case has been continuing for, new facts have emerged which have been negative towards Rebecca Vardy. And it seems like the hole that she initially dug for herself appears to be getting deeper and deeper as each day in court goes by. And the reality is, irrespective actually of what the eventual verdict is going to be, she is unquestionably the loser from a reputation perspective. Where she goes from here, even if she wins, where she goes from here is going to be interesting. I think what the best advice would be for her to kind of go into a degree of self-hibernation for a period of about 12 or 18 months. And I understand recently it emerged that there is a potential for her and her husband, Jamie, to take refuge, take shelter, emigrate over to the United States, where Jamie Vardy can play out his football career for another couple of years over there. That sounds like it could be the best option for them. But Colleen Rooney has actually come out of this incredibly well. She's come out as someone who is probably more family, friends, values-based as an individual. Where she
But let me stop you here, please, if I may, for just a second. Those are perceptions, aren't they? That Rebecca Vardy is the big bad witch, that Colleen Rooney is perhaps the family woman. I don't know whether that's what people have got from the reporting of the case. It's not necessarily what either of them would want to be out there all of the time. I'm wondering where people get these ideas from.
It's all down to facts, though, isn't it? It's things that come out. We had it in the Amber Heard and Johnny Depp case as well. Things keep on emerging that do cast a relatively negative light on the person who's brought the case to court in the first place. It's very difficult. I think with Rebecca Vardy, she's in a very difficult situation, and she didn't help herself obviously when she turned on her own publicist and suggested that maybe that publicist leaked information either intentionally or unintentionally. So it felt like her case was starting to crumble and fall apart, and she just kept on, like I say, digging that hole deeper and deeper for herself. But
the hole happened to be also in the water, didn't it? As this phone apparently went to Davy Jones' locker, which Rebecca Vardy, well, she had never heard of, obviously. Caroline, let me come to you, and I'm going to throw some figures out there. Social media hashtag Johnny Depp is innocent, 1.4 billion views during the trial. Hashtags such as Amber Heard is guilty, 900 million views. And a petition to remove her from the cast of Aquaman 2, 4.5 million signatures. It's all about getting hold of the media narrative as early as possible, isn't it? And how do you do that?
Well, we know that Johnny Depp has been around a lot longer than Amber Heard. So in theory, he had a bigger currency, a bigger well of goodwill to dip into. His reputation was seemingly temporarily wrecked by the UK court case last year, which he lost and emerged as a seeming pariah, with newspapers legally allowed to call him a wife beater. So it was all hanging for him on this US trial. There were just a couple of moments in that trial for which his fans were all ready to pounce on. And I think the turning point was probably when Amber Heard admitted that she hadn't given away the money that she had pledged from her previous victory to the charity that she had pledged that money to. And it was things like that, little acorns of doubt were sown. And then this huge global fan base of Johnny Depp fans, of which we know there are millions, just jumped on this. And it seemed to be a surge of goodwill towards him in those last weeks of that trial. And suddenly all those previous anecdotes of his drunken behavior, his self-described self-sabotage, everything just seemed to get swept away. And this tide of opinion just went in his favor. So by the time the verdict was announced, it was almost a done deal in the court of public opinion. And of course, he's been riding that wave ever since, thanking his fans, whom he's been very quick to call his family. He's jumped on it, and he's surfed that wave, and he continues to do so.
Ryan, apologies for not coming to you straight away, but there's something I want to pick up with Paul, and that is, if you can easily lose the media narrative, as you've said, Rebecca Vardy's agent may well have contributed to, and Rebecca Vardy herself, how do you go about winning it?
Anyone can, have their 15 minutes of fame, and they can, be in the limelight for a certain period of time. Retaining it is the big challenge, but then when it's lost, regaining it, I think, is the even greater challenge. When you look at the Rebecca Vardy incident itself, the reality is she's got a big job to do, a very, very big job to do, because what we're likely seeing is there's been a disregard. I think when you take it into context, and this is where a lot of reputations are damaged, it's down to the context of the here and now. You look at that particular case, which has cost several £1 million, at a time when the media is reporting a significant rise in the cost of living. It has seemed very insensitive to continue with a court case when so many people are struggling at a very expensive court case. So that will invariably have had a negative impact on both Rooney and Vardy, but particularly on Vardy, because ultimately they decided that they were going to go to court. Neither one of them were back down when they were sat around the negotiation table, and neither one of them wanted to lose face, and so that's why it has eventually gone to court. But in terms of regaining it, the only way that Vardy herself, taking that as a case in point, is going to regain public trust, regain her reputation in a positive way, is going into isolation for a period of time, just shunning the limelight and just working on things behind the scenes. So, for example, that could be getting involved in charitable work or work which is related to potential outcomes or offshoots of this particular case.
And that is even if she wins the case.
Quietly.
That is even, she still has to rehabilitate herself even if she wins.
I think the damage has already been done, irrespective of what the outcome is going to be.
Okay. Brian, let me come to you, and I want to ask you about the difference between the case we've been discussing in the UK, which was merely reported in the newspapers with the comings and goings recorded by TV and photographers outside the court and what we saw in the United States with Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, which was played out in real time on TV. Would it have been very different if all we've been able to get from the case were the words written down in a newspaper after the day's proceedings?
I think it would have been different. You saw obviously an unprecedented amount of interest in Depp v. Heard, a case that was not only salacious, but went on for almost 2 months, and daily millions of people tuned in to watch the live stream. There was obviously a crowd every morning in front of the courthouse cheering on Johnny Depp. I understand there was literally one person in the courtroom among the packed crowd who was in support of Amber Heard. Everybody else was supporting Johnny Depp. And the media coverage of the case was 24/7. And I think that there is a chicken and egg there. Obviously, the case came down to a jury of 7. Was that jury able to isolate itself from the rest of the world? There was a 1-week period where there was no trial. The court was dark. In other words, the judge was out of court. So they were out in the world for that week. There was a weekend, 3-day weekend, in fact, right after they heard closing arguments. And so the coverage that allowed this media frenzy to exist, the daily in-court coverage that showed every detail, every image, every bit of testimony of all of the salacious stories told by Johnny Depp and then by Amber Heard and a lot of other A-list celebrities among the witnesses. There is no doubt that that sort of coverage, number one, did it influence the jury? There's a question. I hope not, because the jurors are each instructed not to pay any attention to social media or to anything else, but could they avoid seeing the crowd in the courtroom? Could they avoid seeing all the cameras? Could they avoid all of the other things outside of the courtroom? I question that. And so therefore, I do think there was a definite difference in the outcome of this case as a result of the daily coverage.
And I was coming to social media. You've led me up to it very, very nicely indeed. You may remember the case of Vernon Unsworth and a more memorable man called Elon Musk. Now, Vernon Unsworth was the man who went to try and save those young boys who were trapped underground in Thailand. He was an expert caver. And it was suggested by Elon Musk when Vernon Unsworth rubbished his idea of sending a mini submarine. Musk said, "I don't like this pedo guy." And everybody thought Vernon Unsworth had a pretty good case when it came to taking Musk to court. As it turned out, he lost. Elon Musk won his case. And this is from Vernon Unsworth's attorney, Lynn Wood, warning social media is tearing at the fabric of society and the Musk verdict would worsen that trend. It is now said by this jury that insults are completely open season. Everyone should be concerned about their reputations. That is a worrying trend, Ryan, is it not?
It is a worrying trend. And there's a tension between the rights of people to protect their own private lives and the rights to free speech and the rights to say things. And while there are protections to free speech, nobody has the right to lie. But of course, as the Musk case illustrates, there are exceptions for parodies, for sort of jokes, for things that are maybe not to be taken seriously. And where do you draw that line? Jurors have to make those decisions in most cases. Sometimes they're made by judges. And it is absolutely a slippery slope. And social media, I have to agree, there certainly, as we've seen recently in politics in this country as well, it really threatens the fabric of society. So I think that there are things that the courts have to start to consider around the world, frankly, about the damage that can be done by these sorts of campaigns on social media. And by the way, too, I have to say, when I started to see the overwhelming support for Johnny Depp, and certainly in other cases for other celebrities, people like Elon Musk on social media, frankly, you also have to wonder, is that entirely organic? We know that social media can also be manipulated. We know that these people have PR teams. Are those PR teams out there planting stories, furthering stories? And obviously, we know that there's an accusation that Johnny Depp's lawyer did some of that. But somebody like Elon Musk, with his wherewithal, it's hard to necessarily assume that these social media tools aren't being manipulated.
Yeah, Caroline, to you on this one. What do you make of the fact that somebody can call somebody else a pedo guy and it can be regarded as a bit of a joke because it's on social media?
Well, we know that social media is still struggling to catch up with real life, with print and TV legislation, particularly here in the UK. This is one of the great battles. These huge streaming services and internet platforms, they can still present themselves as just platforms that offer free speech in a democracy. And on the other hand, in a world where they have increasing influence and spread and reach, then I guess at some point their responsibility will have to catch up. We know that the UK government are pushing for this. We've seen Mark Zuckerberg and his peers sit down in Congress in the US. We know that it is a game of kind of the Roadrunner and Bugs Bunny. It's legislation catching up with the Wild West that is offered by these huge, very deep-pocketed and increasingly influential platforms.
Quick mention that we've lost Paul in Bath in the United Kingdom, but Ryan and Caroline's still with us. And Caroline, I'm going to stay with you and venture the thought that this is rather voyeuristic as well, whether we're reading about it in the papers or seeing it on TV. These are people under oath. They are putting their reputations on the line. It's almost like watching some kind of gladiatorial contest where you have an investment in the fighters.
Well, I think what's happened is that in this world of increasing brand management on the part of these superstars, the courtroom offers, I think, perhaps the unique spot where we do see them stripped down, alone, entourage free, as you say, completely under oath. They have to speak the truth or they're in a lot of trouble. And so the great paradox is that while we're offered a window into this glamorous world with these familiar faces who are otherwise successful, rich, incredibly famous, we see them with all their vulnerabilities on show. We hear about betrayals, romances gone wrong, crimes committed, sometimes being taken for an absolute fool by a manager or an agent when it comes to people being sort of robbed of riches and royalties. So there's this very human connection that we have to these people in the dock. And of course, they're incredibly important and glamorous and successful. It's the great paradox that these courtroom trials offer us. Yes, they are voyeuristic, and I don't think it's going to stop anytime soon.
Well, you see, this is part of the point, isn't it? I mean, what we're hearing may well be unpleasant, it may well be dirty laundry, but by watching it, we are part and parcel of the whole process, and we are just as unsavoury ourselves.
I am not going to disagree with you, David. I think that's absolutely true. I think it is a very human quality since the dawn of time to be popping our little eyes over the fence at the next door neighbours' goings on, sort of peeking through our net curtains and seeing what's going on in the street outside. And I think that this is just a very glamorous version offered us. And of course, these stars, we kind of rationalise that they've put themselves in our observational sites through their riches and behaviour. It seems to be a tax that they then get levied for their great success. And of course, it makes us all feel a little bit better that the fact that they are so rich and famous and successful does not immunise or anaesthetise them from the pains and the spoils that come the rest of us way. So
Okay.
yes, this is a great human thing.
Ryan, in California, have you ever seen a celebrity in court and felt sorry for them because of the hell they're going through and the idiotic things they've done and said, or do they bring it all on themselves?
Well, I think they both may be true. And so even if somebody has brought it all on themselves, it certainly wouldn't prevent me from thinking, what are they doing? And feeling bad. And frankly, I can say that I felt that way about Amber Heard. I watched that trial. I was covering that trial and commentating on it. And although it seems to be quite clear that some of the things she said were either exaggerated or just untrue, or at least didn't seem to be credible. I think at the end of the day, there are at times really different realities from a subjective point of view. And I think when you get into some of these scenarios that involve a lot of activity behind closed doors, there's drugs and alcohol involved, and things of that nature, it blurs some of these lines and things aren't black and white. And so when you see at the end of the day, somebody like Amber Heard issue this sort of statements that she did after her loss, I can't help but feel some sympathy for her. I think, frankly, in that case, She was also out-lawyered. I think the lawyers for Johnny Depp, you can see by the way the trial went. His lawyers sat down with him and said, all right, Johnny, you are going to have to put your dirty laundry out all over the street, and you're going to have to come out and get out in front of all these issues, because when he took the stand, that's exactly what he did. And he sort of diffused a lot of the stuff that was coming by fronting it and by facing it and by saying, look, I have had problems with these things. And then you had Amber Heard coming up and trying to attack his credibility and other witnesses. So at the end of the day, I absolutely do feel bad for some of these people. And you can see that, as I said earlier, they start a process in motion and they cannot unring the bell. These things are underway. The eyes of the world are watching. And you see somebody just kind of fall flat repeatedly. I absolutely feel bad for those people. And I feel somewhat bad for Amber Heard. I'm not suggesting that she didn't get good advice. I think she also knew what she was doing. She had good lawyers. I don't want to give that impression either.
But it didn't pan out. It didn't pan out for her, Ryan. Thank you very much indeed. Almost like Hunger Games without the finality of the way that ended on a number of different occasions. Listen, thank you very, very much indeed. Insight into a world we've been watching voyeuristically, but not really been part of. Perhaps that's part of the attraction. Caroline, thank you very much indeed. Ryan, good of you to get up so jolly early in California. And thank you wherever you happen to be watching this edition of Roundtable. Look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye.